You're listening to 99.1 WQRT LP, and welcome to Radio Free Book Club for April 2024. I'm Ken Honeywell. I'm a writer and a reader from Indianapolis, and this month we're talking about a novel with an Indianapolis connection. It's called Martyr, with an exclamation point. It's the first novel by Kaveh Akbar, who earned his Master of Fine Arts degree right here at Butler University. Kaveh was born in Tehran, Iran, and moved to the U.S. when he was 2 years old. He did his undergraduate work at Purdue, earned his Ph.D. at Florida State University. He's currently a member of the faculty at the University of Iowa, so he's no slouch. Until now, Akbar has been best known as a poet. His poetry's appeared in the New Yorker, the New York Times, Paris Review, Best American Poetry, lots of other places. He won Pushcart Prizes in 2017 and 2018. Martyr was the lead review in the New York Times Book Review a couple months ago. It's been glowingly reviewed all over the place, which, if history is any indication, does not necessarily mean we're going to love it. We all might love it. We maybe not. We'll find out. Who are we? Well, let's find out who we are before we go any further. Let's introduce the book clubbers for this month. If you're a regular listener, you've met them all before, but let's meet them again. Hello, Barb.
Why, hello, Ken.
Who are you?
Who am I?
Tell us a little bit more about yourself, would you?
You were going to ask me that. I am a novelist and a teacher, and that's pretty much takes up all my time.
Yeah, you are. I know you are no slouch either. You're a busy person.
I am indeed.
Hi, Steve Woods.
I'm a tremendous slouch.
Yes, that's one of the reasons we love you.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. It's my maybe sixth appearance.
Yeah, maybe.
So happy to be back. I'm a financial advisor and received my MFA in creative writing, and I'm a frustrated writer, I suppose, always looking for time, which I was whining about earlier.
Yeah, as are we all. And last but not nearly least, Robin Beery. Hello, Robin.
Hi. Another frustrated writer here. I think if you're not a frustrated writer, you're not doing it right.
Amen.
I'm a father, a husband, a writer, and last year I didn't earn any money doing any of those things. I mentioned because I was just talking about my taxes before we came on the air, and y'all missed it. But I did have some things to declare, but it wasn't related to those things.
Yeah. But, hope springs eternal, right?
That's right.
Right. Well, yeah, thanks, Robin, and thanks, everybody, and thanks for being here to talk about Martyr today. One little speed bump before we get started. We are definitely going to spoil this book, and there are definitely things you are going to want to discover on your own. So if you are going to read Martyr, please do yourself a favor and stop listening now. Come back another time, and that is easy to do because you can find this and all the episodes of Radio Free Book Club on Mixcloud, on WQRT.org, on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, just about anywhere you stream podcasts. And if you want something else great to listen to right now, try one of WQRT's other great programs, all of which you can find at WQRT.org. And please do come back and listen to our discussion of Martyr. I have a feeling it's going to be a really good one. So let's get going. Let's first just talk a little bit about Kaveh Akbar. Anybody met him? Anybody have read his poetry in the past? Anybody?
I've read some of his poetry, which I have really enjoyed, and I did a workshop with him a couple of years ago. He did a poetry exercise in which he brought in, I couldn't even tell you how many copies of different poetry books, collections, and we just kept passing them around, and he would say something like, take a line from the poem on page whatever, and then we ended up with all these lines of poems that we turned into poems. It was a great exercise. He's a wonderful teacher.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Anybody else ever met him?
I've not. I was supposed to go to a reading that he gave either a year or two ago, and I flaked out. So, so it looks like I really missed out too.
Yeah. Steve, any?
No, brand new. I'm a virgin to all this.
Yeah, I think I probably met him at least once. Robin, when we worked for the ad agency, I think we did a logo for his Dive Dapper poetry carnival that he did at Butler for a couple of years. And then he had a website, I think that still exists, a website called Dive Dapper. I don't know if that logo is still in use, but I think we did one. So, yeah, and I've been, a little familiar with his poetry, but yeah, the novel is, it was really unexpected. I really didn't expect it. I guess I wasn't paying attention.
I was surprised by that too.
So, Barb, can you maybe just give us just a real quick intro to the book? What do you think the book's about? What's going on there?
Well, essentially, the character, Cyrus, who is a poet and has had lots of substance abuse problems. He came to, I think, the background of the characters seems to be very much like the background of the author, coming to Fort Wayne, living there with his father, who died when the character and Kaveh was quite young. So, he's a guy with a lot of problems, and he's pretty obsessed with the idea of his life has to matter and his death has to matter, which is, to me, even sort of more interesting. He's obsessed with martyrs. Thus the exclamation point. And so he's kind of on this journey. He gets sober and he's still not happy. And he's just trying to figure out, I think, who he is and what matters and how he could matter. He wants to live a life that matters. I totally could relate to that. And as a person who writes novels, I also would like to say that he does a great job. I mean, a lot of time when you read a novel by a poet, the language in this novel is beautiful, but it's never overdone. Sometimes poets, I got to say it, they get a little carried away.
Right.
And it doesn't work well in a novel, but it did here.
It did, and
it really did.
And it's, I'm not sure you would think he was a poet after reading it. Just that he was quite a beautiful writer.
Yeah,
I mean, what an accomplished first novel this was. I thought. Yeah. So, what did we think about it? Just in general, what did we think, Robin? What'd you think about it?
I loved it. I wouldn't say I loved it unreservedly, but overall, just really enjoyed reading this. Even though it was a lot of difficult subjects in this book for sure, but enjoyed spending time with Cyrus, with the other characters. And I agree with Barb. I mean, I think he dodged a lot of the pitfalls that I would have expected from a poet novelist, from a first novelist, from someone writing about a writer. I mean, those are all really tricky.
Boy, no kidding.
Areas that have
been 3 strikes.
Yeah, like especially the writing about a writer. It's been done a lot before. It's not easy. I don't. I think maybe none of us here can really speak to how a non-writer reader would react to this book. So that would be a question, I guess, for the audience. Like, what did you think? Were you engaged in the drama of being a writer or not?
But it also, that drama was not, while I think it was central to the story, was not exactly dominant in the story.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, you're right, Robin, about all of those points. Yeah, pretty incredible to, as you said, Barb, 3 strikes. That's a pretty difficult feat, I thought too. Steve Woods, what did you think?
I liked it. I thought, given the fact that he was a poet and his love of language, there were parts of it that were a little distracting. I felt like he was almost preening and kind of showing off, but I also enjoyed it too because his writing was so beautiful. At parts it was distracting, but I kind of got over that and just kind of gave myself to the narrative and everything. But I thought it was a very strong novel. I really liked it and would certainly recommend it.
Yeah. Robin, you mentioned you didn't love it unreservedly. What were your reservations?
Sure. I would say that it was a bit of a slow starter in a lot of ways. And not in some of the ways that I typically encounter that, though. I mean, I was on board with the character pretty quickly. I was interested in like how the different parts of his life were going to come together and where it was going. Maybe it just took a little while to get cooking. Like, okay, we got the ingredients. We don't need another like chapter that sort of states all the ingredients. And then another, so maybe there was just a little bit of slow, like keep going over a lot of the same terrain and not raise the stakes any. And then, toward the middle of the book, suddenly, zoom, the stakes kind of go up quite a bit. I would say when he decides that he's going to seek out Orkida, if I'm saying that name right, the artist who, is in the Brooklyn Museum talking to people about her impending death. Mm-hmm. That's kind of where, for me, like all of a sudden I was turning pages faster. I wasn't putting it down.
Yeah, it's interesting. Another one of our frequent club members, I think, read a few chapters and dropped me a note and said, "This is good, right?" And I said, you got to keep going. Barb, what do you think?
There's a lot. The structure of this was really interesting to me. And I'm very curious. I would love to know how he came to that, whether he knew where all those pieces fit or whether he tinkered with them. But, so there was the story, which was the story of him getting his act together, which he did. And then there were bits and pieces from the book that the character was writing, poems as well as prose. There were, I don't even know what, accounts of the airplane crash that killed his mother. And I wasn't, that to me, I didn't get that. I didn't really need that. I skimmed over those every time. Then there were a series of first-person accounts from all these different characters. Most of the
secondary characters
his
were
father,
first
his
person.
Mother,
Z.
his uncle, his friend Z, and dreams. There were dreams.
Right.
So I think it took me a while to sort of settle into. I would like to read this again. I've read it twice because I would. The more you read something, the more you figure it out. You know how it works, and I wonder exactly what the pattern is. But I thought it was good. But I hadn't thought about it. But I agree with you, Robin. It did take a while for me to sort of figure out what I was looking at.
Yeah, I mean, Steve, what did you think? Those opening sequences, kind of like the sequence in the hospital where he was, for some reason, I mentioned Seinfeld on every one of these episodes, but there's the Seinfeld episode where Kramer and Mickey are pretending to be sick for doctors. Yeah, that's what Cyrus was doing.
I thought that was hilarious.
It was pretty funny.
I was waiting for a junior mint.
Right.
One of the things that struck me was how he was a very hesitant protagonist. And I don't know if that's the right term, but everything he was pushed into action, which is pretty consistent with kind of a hero's journey. But he just lived in this state of arrested development, and the narrative kind of lent itself to that because he was a frustrated, he's a poet. Can he call himself a poet? And he received that permission later on in the book that, if you're writing poetry, I think Z said, I drum, I'm a drummer.
Right.
I happen to work at this job, but I consider myself a drummer, and you should consider yourself a poet. So he was kind of like a bottle in the ocean being pushed by the currents, and that's kind of how the narrative moved on. He was urged to go to New York. I think that Z's departure kind of urged him to go back and find or recapture this love that he had. So he never really seemed to do anything other than react to these outside forces, which I thought was kind of indicative of kids in that age group. With I have a college age daughter and a couple of teenagers. They need to be pushed, and he was of that same ilk, I thought.
Yeah.
I think it's also not, necessarily typical, but it fit with me with his addiction too and his recovery. Because I think one thing that can happen when you're addicted is that substitutes for things that would otherwise move you in your life, right? It becomes just all about doing the thing that you're addicted to and making sure that you can have it when you need it and doing it again. And then when you take that away, suddenly you don't know what your motivation is anymore.
Yeah. So that was what do we think was the source of his anger? I mean, he seems to be very angry, right? At the start of this book, he blows up at his sponsor. He's friendly with Z. He does that weird thing with the budding doctor in the hospital. He's been in recovery for at least a couple of years. His dad's been gone for longer than that. Why is he so angry? Anybody have any thoughts about that?
Well, I mean, I think an obvious answer would be just the hand that life dealt him, losing his mother at an early age, having an uncle that he was close to that is totally a recluse now, and then the father that leaves too early. He feels like life is probably, or he's the victim of life of some sort, and that kind of probably fuels his anger. It may have driven him to the substance abuse problems that he had as an escape.
Yeah. He's kind of a martyr.
Yeah, well, he is.
Right.
That's interesting.
But I also think he's angry at himself.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got a pretty good bullshit detector. And whether he's admitting it or not, he's actually got a lot going for him.
Yeah.
And he should be making something of his life. This sort of scrambling around, it has to be so meaningful, which is also common with certain kinds of sort of creative types. So I think he's tired of being a victim, but doesn't know what to do about it. So it's just like sort of almost like that free range kind of anger.
Yeah.
Life is not easy.
Yeah.
Or fair.
Oh, God, fair, right.
I would add too that he's also living now in the country that shot down his mother's plane by mistake and then refused to apologize for or sort of own the mistake, which I think he doesn't. I think he does touch on that directly some, but also a lot of those epigraphs
bits
before
and pieces, yes.
chapters were very pointedly sort of, I think,
yeah.
What do I want to say? Sardonic.
Yeah.
Epigraphs, I would say.
Yeah. And clearly he's dealt with a lot of othering too, just because he's from Iran, right? He doesn't know quite where the Persian stops and the American starts and vice versa.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that airplane for a minute. So in chapter 4, we get the account of the woman who gets on the doomed airplane, and we all assume that that is Roya. And we assume that till the third act, into the third act. What do we think about that? Was that fair?
Not really. I mean, it's not really. But I have to say, I noticed the second time I read it, I noticed it said the woman, that it was referred to the woman.
Yes.
And I wonder how many, did you guys catch that?
No.
Yeah, I'm guessing most readers didn't catch it. So at the same time, I say that's not fair. I also say what I always say to students: you can do whatever you can get away with, right? And so I think it probably works for most readers. But when I saw it, when I went through the second time, I was like, meh.
Right.
But I'm okay with it. He got away with it. Clever, actually.
Well, left to our own devices, we're going to connect those dots in the most
right, of course,
kind of simple ways. So
right.
It was just a literary kind of sleight of hand, and shame on us for
not getting it.
Yeah,
right. I would also say, like, apart from whether it was fair, I did find myself asking at the end, was it necessary for Orquídea to be his mother? Because that was something that occurred to me, but I was like, no, that's not right, because she died in the plane crash.
Yeah.
But he really strongly seemed to be setting it up that way.
Well, yeah.
I
and
had
again,
that thought too.
Did you on the first time through?
Yeah,
did you feel like that was going to be his mother?
No, I felt like when I got to the point where it was his mother, part of me thought one took too far. I didn't need that.
Yeah,
it would have been enough for me to have had the conversations with the woman that brought him to what he finally.
Yeah, right.
knows.
I mean. But feeling set up in this way, like feeling like he was doing something, I found myself when, and I can't remember her name, but Roya's lover.
Song.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, I found myself, not her. Her lover in Iran.
Lila.
Yes.
Lila?
Lila.
I found myself thinking, is this Lila?
Oh, yeah.
And because I felt so strongly that he was sort of setting up some sort of convergence, right? That she would turn out to be someone who was important to his mother. That would have worked for me. But also, I think, too, it was just enough that she was sort of a mother figure and had something to say about death. So... But I didn't feel cheated by it, really, and it's hard to say why. Maybe because it was handled so well.
Yeah, I certainly didn't feel cheated by it the first time I read it because I didn't even think of it. But the second time through, it was clear that it was just the woman.
Mm-hmm. I know. I felt manipulated then.
But you knew what was going to happen at that point.
Well, yeah, I had finished the book.
Yeah.
Once.
But you probably didn't feel manipulated the first time through. Or did you?
I did, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
okay.
I did. And again, I mean, I think it works on it works. I think he did get away with it. But I felt like it was just more than I wanted in a way.
Yeah.
Too neat.
Mm-hmm.
It certainly was a needle in a haystack situation that this boy that came to see her was, in fact, her son. However, you can't forget that she had willingly abandoned him. So she's kind of mother by name only. She had every opportunity to identify herself and let her ex-wife or Sang or whoever reveal that. But
yeah,
that kind of helped with that stretch. I really didn't feel like it was going to be a homecoming type situation just based on everything that we knew. But it helped me kind of connect those dots, I suppose.
Well, it's really interesting that she apparently did not have the courage in the end to say to him, I am your mother. Which is, interesting, sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, can you be a martyr without courage. I'm not sure you really can. At
And-
least,
And
That's a good question.
do we think she intentionally took too many pills?
Yeah, I thought that the second time did you guys think that?
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, I do. Because Song said something that indicated, because she was angry herself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. So, so kind of on that note, Cyrus at some point to somebody says he is after the definition of the word martyr that could accommodate his mother's death on the plane. Was that a martyr's death?
No, that was just a tragic death. I think. I mean, that's just such an interesting concept anyway. I mean, what exactly is a martyr? Is a martyr only somebody who, like Joan of Arc, you cannot stop me no matter what, and,
Right.
so she gets burned up? Or is a martyr,
Well,
can you be inadvertently a martyr? I don't know.
Let's just say, was Ali a martyr? Did he give his life for his son?
He did.
Yeah,
He did.
he came closer, I think,
Hmm.
for sure.
I don't know what else he would have done, though. I don't, I mean, what would have been his other options to stay there? And
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know either.
How about Arash? He wasn't dead, but was he a martyr? He certainly lost his life in service of his country.
He did. But it wasn't something he believed in. I mean, I feel like if you're a martyr, you have to have believed in the thing that you die for, passionately. And I don't think he did. Boy, was he an interesting character, though.
Right.
Yeah.
His job being to be the person who had to go around on a horse after the battle and find the people who were dying and kind of
Lead them to heaven.
Lead them to heaven or whatever. I mean, what a bizarre sort of job to have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And why do you think that he got that job?
I don't know. Was there anything that made you think he?
Well, I mean, Ken, in one of the notes that you had offered, what did the scene with Roya and Arash at the lake, and she had jumped in, and he was terrified at this. So it clearly showed him as a coward.
Yeah.
Right. I just wondered if he wasn't given that job because he lacked courage to actually fight. And I thought every description of him kind of imploding into his own world and, like I said earlier, becoming a recluse, if that didn't kind of typify his cowardice to, I think from a literary standpoint, juxtapose how strong Roya was. And that strength led her to totally abandon her husband and son. Strength nonetheless. But
also recklessness, that, that memory of he was being the sensible person, really. I'm not sure that it was a matter of courage for him, but she was certainly just forging right ahead, which she did. I mean, she seized what she wanted and she went for it in her real life. But I think you're right, i.e., why he might have been chosen, because he wasn't a person suited for battle.
And was that just to counterbalance how we are supposed to think about Roya then?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's where I kind of arrived.
Yeah. Yeah. Good thought, Steve. We're talking about the novel Martyr by Kaveh Akbar, and you're listening to Radio Free Book Club on WQRT LP. And just to kind of continue this discussion about martyrs a little bit, Robin was, I'm not, you're saying Orchida, I was saying Orchidea. I have no idea how to pronounce that. Shame on me for not looking it up. Was she a martyr?
I think she sacrificed some things in her life.
Did she die a martyr's death?
Death, martyrdom.
She would have died anyway.
I'm not sure who would have asked for that kind of death, right? I mean, to be a martyr, you have to be trying to save someone or give something to someone that you think they need, or, do something for a cause that you believe in. And I'm not sure what that would be in her case.
Well, let me ask a related question. Was it art?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it was art.
Okay. Steve?
I agree.
Yeah. Barb?
I'm
agree?
in.
Yeah.
The idea that she would elicit these conversations for people to have for complete strangers to have these very real conversations and admissions, I think that's noble. Just to tie in my thoughts back on that martyrdom, there was a point in the battlefield where Arash, I think, had described somebody taking his own life, and that was the coward's way out. If she did, in fact, take all those pills, was that a comment then that she didn't really live up to that martyr status and took her own life rather than allowing death to, which is what she, death speak was the whole point of this. And she robbed herself of that kind of title, ultimately, if you believe that she did take the pills.
Yeah, which it sounds like we all do. It certainly was implied. So, Barb, one of the things that I thought was interesting, and I wonder if you noticed, was I feel like Cyrus confused living a life that matters and having a death that matters. He said both of those things. Did you notice that? Did you?
Yeah. And I didn't exactly know what he meant by having a death that matters. I mean, the martyr thing, but what was there in his life? I guess that was his question. What is there in my life that I could make into martyrdom or something?
Right. And what a cliche to be the angry Iranian guy who wants to die a martyr's death.
Yeah. I mean, it is. Also, it occurred to me when I was kind of thinking about this was the idea, when we think of martyrs, we sort of think of famous people who made big statements and it was a big deal. But how many people among us are, in a sense, martyrs? And they're not recognized for it. And so part of what I think Cyrus wanted was not just to be a martyr, but to be recognized as a martyr. That was something he was really struggling with, I think, generally, that recognition for the work that he wasn't yet doing, but believed that he could and would. And I think that's I thought about that a lot at some point. What does that mean to be a martyr?
Yeah. I don't think you can help but think about it. It's such a topic of the book.
Yeah, and you can. To me, the martyr is the person not who chooses to be a martyr, but who chooses to do the thing. I mean, they cannot say no to it. They are going to do it. They will not step back no matter what happens.
Right. Bobby Sands was
exactly. So it's not about I'm going to be a martyr for this. It's I'm going to stand for this thing that I really believe in.
Right.
And you can't make me stop.
Yeah. What did we think of the story of Z's first-person chapter, where Cyrus damages his foot with an axe?
Oh, that was strange.
It was a pretty strange encounter, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'm having trouble bringing that back to my mind.
Well,
so
remember they went to this guy's house who watched them do chores in his underwear.
Yes, I'm getting it back now.
Right, in exchange for groceries, which they somehow found, more palatable than if he was giving them money. But yeah, what about the wound? What was there about that wound? I mean, it seems, is that just too baldly symbolic of the state of Cyrus's soul?
I didn't feel like it was. I mean, I didn't.
I mean, it was there in the last page of the book.
I know, but why? I mean,
I don't know.
It didn't. That question surprised me because I hadn't really thought of it. It just seemed like something dumb that he did.
Yeah.
So
I can't point to anywhere in the book, but I did write in my notes that there were several mentions of feet. and he wounded his foot. I didn't know if that was any sort of reference or
just a fetish. You are no. I mean, just thinking about it. I mean, he talked about Orchida's feet.
Yes,
he was kind of obsessed with Z's Crocs and his own shoes. Yeah,
and
interesting.
To be wounded in the foot, and then there was also mentions of how the Iranian people believe themselves to be ugly.
Yeah.
Yes,
and I didn't know in the feet were something that they would cover up. So I just didn't know enough about that, but I thought that it's a story that he put in there on purpose, so it should have some meaning. The fact that I missed it is maybe a little problematic.
Yeah.
You need to hit me over the head a little bit more.
Maybe not. Maybe he put it in there and it doesn't really belong. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's another possibility because this novel is so complex and there are so many different things. It would be easy, just what I know from my own process and from teaching novel writing and all that, is that you can end up with a lot of stuff that's really good, but it doesn't necessarily belong there. And it's really hard to let those things go. So for me, the wound was, I don't know, I didn't have any meaning. I don't know if it was meant to have meaning. If it was meant to have meaning, I didn't get it, which might be my fault as a reader as much as the writer's fault. I don't know.
I do think the way that he introduces it, though, is one of the things that I think did keep me engaged in the book, which was the particularity and not randomness exactly, but particularity, I guess is a better way of saying it, of his stories and details. They may not all have pointed in a direction, but they all seemed, I guess it was a sort of a feeling of, oh, well, that's something new and interesting. So I'm in.
How about the dream sequences? Did you find them interesting?
I did, actually. Actually, I found the dream sequences interesting and moving.
Yeah.
The Lisa Simpson one's the one that sticks with me the most, probably because I think that was the first one that. Again, I think there are a lot of things in that. One is, like, to your point, he's as much American as he is Persian. And so I think that's a way of sort of introducing sort of our secular gods in a way, right? Mm-hmm. I like the idea of Lisa Simpson. She should definitely be in our pantheon.
Right. She really should be.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah, right along with Bleeding Gums Murphy.
Right, yes.
I loved the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar one with the imaginary brother.
Yeah.
That was sweet.
It was sweet.
Really. And some funny, too. And that's something, parts of this book are hilarious. There's a lot of humor in it. And one thing comes to mind, which I don't even know why it made me laugh so much, but it's toward the end. And he says... it says, his whole life was a conspiracy of other people helping him, other people teaching him this or that. He felt like Hamlet, just moping around, waiting for the world to assuage his grief, petulantly soliloquizing and fainting while everyone else fed him bananas and candy bars. But that's funny. funny to me. And he draws on he makes so many wonderful literary allusions.
Right.
He's so knowledgeable in that. And they all seem
pop
natural.
culture allusions
and pop
as well,
culture too,
right?
Yeah. But it's all natural. And it's often funny, where he uses it, how he uses it.
So I want to read something to set up a question. This is toward the end of the book, very close to the end of the book, what Orchidea is saying. She says, let's skip the BS in response to a little passage of a poem. The poem is, I won't see spring, these lines are all that will remain. As heaven spins, I fall into bedlam. I am gone, my heart is filled with sorrow. O Muslims, I am sad tonight. We can't afford all that anymore, not here in the abyss. And then she goes on to say, for our species, the idea of art as ornament is a relatively new one. Our ape brains got too big for our heads, too big for our mothers to birth them. So we started keeping all our extra knowing in language and art and stories and books and songs. Art was a way of storing our brains in each other's. It wasn't until fairly recently in human history, when rich landowners wanted something pretty to look at in winter, that the idea of art as mere ornament came around. A painting of a blooming rose to hang on the mantel when the flowers outside the window had gone to ice. And still in the 21st century, it's hard for folks to move past that. This idea that beauty is the horizon toward which all great art must march. I've never been interested in that. I just think that's a beautiful passage. Yeah. So my question is, did this book say anything to you about language and the limits of language? What did it say to you? Anybody? Maybe I just read it, what it said.
Not so much. I mean, it kind of between the lines, I think more for me. I loved the line, which was, I want to be the chisel, not the David.
Yeah, right.
And so I felt like the message that was coming to me was that it was the process of making art, the person you were when you were doing it, was so much more important in the end than the product of it, and that was something that kind of ran through, and I believe that to be true myself, and I like that a lot.
Orchidea mentioned that to him during one of their conversations about, I think he was whining about anger, and I think she said something to the effect of, you need to put a saddle on it, and you need to harness that and use it.
Yeah.
Right. She said you can put a saddle on anger.
Yeah.
Have you ever put a saddle on anger, Steve?
I have not. I should try.
Yeah. I think usually I more like put a muzzle on anger, but...
Oh, I've put a saddle on anger.
Have you?
Yeah. I have too.
It's a wild ride.
Yeah. Uh-huh. I'm sure.
No surprise.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I'm bad at it, but I do get it.
I think it's taken me definitely to some very regrettable places. But it's also taken me to, I think artistically, it can take you to some good places if you are lucky.
Yeah, right.
And I've been lucky a couple times with that, but I don't know that I'd recommend it as a technique.
Yeah. I think I've more put a saddle on sadness sometimes than on anger. Yeah.
Well, I think you have to put a saddle on anything that gets in the way of being your best self.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if it's anger, you've got to do it. And, you're going to look at it maybe sideways, not head on in terms of creating characters that are like you. They don't have to be like you. But I think writing is about that a lot, that you have to come up against the things that frighten you or stop you and get through them by way of a story. And you come out on the other end and you feel different.
Yeah, yeah.
It's happened to me many times.
So what did we think about the last chapter, basically the reunion of Z and Cyrus? Was that emotionally satisfying? Robin,
I mean, yes. I don't think it was the most emotionally satisfying part for me. But I mean, I'm happy to see people feeling happy. So in that sense, yes. I think there was a lot of tying up at the end. And I don't know. I don't feel like I believe in the question of whether anything is really earned necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
It's just more a matter of like, is it right? And I don't know if that was right or not.
I would have been happy for it to end with Z and Cyrus, because to me that was what a big part of what the book was about, was allowing yourself to love someone, allowing yourself to open up, and that was what he had to
have
learn.
That thing to live for.
Yeah, that was what you have to live for, and I felt like the coda was why. It wasn't about that. The book was not about that. But I mean, I didn't throw the book across the room or anything like that. I just thought, oh, there's more.
Yeah.
I think the satisfying part was, this all happened to Cyrus, and he realized that he had no one to talk to and share that with. And the reunion back with Z kind of gave him that audience of the person that he wanted to share that with most. So that was kind of the happy ending. The coda was a bit of a head scratcher, though, for me.
Yeah.
I bet that was, I don't know, should I use that? Maybe yeah, maybe no. I wonder. I'd be curious to know.
Yeah.
I think the more you try to do in a novel, the harder it must be to end it, right? I think. Never having finished one myself, have to cop to that, so I don't really know what I'm talking about here. But
you know what, though? There's a feeling of inevitability if you've threaded, it's like you're braiding. And if you've threaded everything or braided it all and nothing's left out there hanging like a hank of hair, you come to the end, and it's like with your real life. There aren't that many ways it could end. It's pretty much inevitable. And I think the inevitable ending for me was the one with Z.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it felt very much that way, a good ending.
Yeah. And I mean, it was the ending, right? The other is just playing over the credits at the movie theater.
You know what else I loved? I just thought of this, that I don't know if you probably did notice it, but that great quote from Clarice Lispector, and at the very beginning, it just said, "My God, I just remembered that we die."
Yeah.
But then at the end, the whole quote was there. "My God, I just remembered that we die. But me too? Don't forget that for now. It's strawberry season." So that was a very hopeful thing to me. I thought that was a very clever use of that quote. That was cool.
Right. It reminds me of the famous William Saroyan quote that goes something like, I've always known that all men are mortal, but I thought an exception would be made in my case.
What?
Yeah, which is the only thing I know that William Saroyan said. So... I mean, it seems like we all enjoyed the book. Would we all recommend it, Steve?
Yeah, I started off with that. I tipped my hand early. I would absolutely recommend it.
Yeah, that's why I went to you first. I just wanted to, get that out of the way again.
I got
it. Yeah, Robin, what do you think?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, like I said, the more you try to do, the harder it is to make it all work together. And
he tried to do a lot.
He did. And I think in many ways it's more admirable to just bite off more than you can chew and have to, I don't know if I want to continue this metaphor, but anyway, to have some things left over and untied up, or maybe even a little unsatisfactory for some readers. Oh, that's fine. Yeah, there will be plenty to enjoy in this book. More than enough, more than you would want.
Yeah. Barb, what do you think?
I do recommend it. I am recommending it right now.
Yeah.
I think it's really good. And I think it's an honest book about hard things, which I always like to see. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
Me too. And really, what a bonus that the guy got his MFA at Butler.
I know.
We can have a little local pride in this.
I think that's
really
right.
Beautiful, really accomplished first novel.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. I've recommended it a few times already.
Bravo.
Yeah. Okay, now comes the point in the program where we recommend something. Barb, what will you be recommending this month?
Well, I just finished Percival Everett's James.
Baby. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Read that book. It is amazing. It's a retelling of Mark Twain's Huckleberry Finn. I just don't even know what to say about it. It's just amazing. Yeah. It really is.
I haven't read it, but I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, he's great.
I thought The Trees was amazing.
You recommended The Trees, and I loved that too.
And has anyone seen American Fiction?
Me. Loved it.
Also based on a Percival James novel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. He seems to be maybe getting the credit he deserves as a really great novelist.
Really innovative. Yeah.
Yeah.
And daring.
Yeah.
That's the other thing about Martyr. That's a daring novel.
Yes.
I admire that.
Yes. I agree with you.
Yeah.
Steve, got something for us?
I was just on a flight last week for spring break, and I picked up Fight Club again because I knew it was going to be something that would move. And so I just read that again on a flight back, and it blows your mind. One of the rare books. I think the movie's better, though.
Really? I've never read that book. I'll have to.
It's a great book, but I really loved the movie.
Yeah. Great recommendation. I have never read it. I've always kind of wondered about it, but haven't ever read it.
I like Chuck Palahniuk. So.
Yeah. Robin, anything beyond your tax returns?
So I can't honestly recommend it yet because I haven't finished it, but I'm in the middle of a new book this year, The Extinction of Irina Ray.
I've seen that.
Which she translated one or two of Olga the Polish Nobel Prize winners.
I can't say
books.
it either.
Yeah, I shouldn't have tried without knowing how to say her last name. Starts with a T, though. That'll probably get you there if you're Googling it. But it seems really good so far. It takes place. It's a group of translators of a Polish writer. So there's a metafictional sort of component to it. And it just seems really interesting and fun.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, great recommendation. So I've mentioned a couple times in the past, I'm not much of a genre reader outside of science fiction. I read a little bit of science fiction, but romance and mysteries and thrillers and those kinds of things, I just don't read very often. So I've got some big genre-shaped holes in my reading. Anyhow, a couple weeks ago, my friend Tim Taylor and I were having coffee, and he was talking about how much he loved John le Carré, and I confessed I had never read John le Carré. I had read a couple of Graham Greene novels, and that's about the limits of my spy novel consumption. Well, lo and behold, a week later, he brought me The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, a 1963 novel that I distinctly remember sitting on my parents' bookshelves. I mean, how could you not? I mean, what a great title that is, right? I mean, that's going to catch your eye no matter what. But I had never read it, and oh my gosh, what a great book. I could not put it down. I read it in a little bit over 24 hours. It's not a very long book, but wow, what a great story. Really well written, really unsettling, really keeps you off balance because you're not sure who the good guys and the bad guys are, or even what the difference between the good guys and the bad guys is. I just had the best time reading The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, and now I guess I have to read more John le Carré.
Yes, you do.
Yeah. So that is it for us. You can find notes for this and all of our shows in the Radio Free Book Club blog on Medium.com. Please consider following us. Drop us a note on Facebook. Stream the show wherever you listen to podcasts. We're always interested in what you think about the book and the show. For Barb Shoup, Robin Beery, Steve Woods, and all the members of Radio Free Book Club, I'm Ken Honeywell. Thanks for listening, and join us next month when we'll be tackling the sophomore effort from Tommy Orange, whose first book was the excellent There, and whose new book is called Wandering Stars. Until then, read a book.